Welcome to the Seahawkers Podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
Aaron Rodgers can't be the number one player in the league. He slipped last year. He did. I can't blame him. He's probably distracted by his super hot girlfriend. Like, I understand. He's got other things.
And Brandon Schultz.
We need to be more encouraging of Pete Prisco, Adam. We need to help him along. Good job. You had Russell in the top 50. We've told you many times to do better, and now you are. We're proud of you, Pete.
Go Hawks!
On a quest to own the West, yippee-ki-yay, we make the ground shake. On game day, 12 man, yeah, he's feeling it is vital. The Seahawks coming to take division titles.
This is the Seahawkers Podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz, member of the military Seahawkers, and joining me, an inaugural member of the Montana Seahawkers, my good buddy, Adam Emmert.
I'm glad that you threw in there as a member of the Montana Seahawkers. I thought I was going to have a little chat with you about how I need my full title in there.
No, it is officially part of your full title.
Perfect.
And I think from here on out, if I forget it, I'm just not doing my job.
No, that's all right. We all make mistakes.
But you can dock my pay. I mean... Right.
All millions of dollars of it. You know some guys that aren't going to get their pay docked this year, Brandon?
I know two guys in particular that may even have a little bump in pay.
Yeah, this is an exciting day to come on the pod and talk to you guys because Paul Allen went to the top of his skyscraper and he threw the window wide open for a championship run for the next 4 or 5 years. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yep, general manager John Schneider extended for 5 years and head coach Pete Carroll extended for 3 years. That means we have each guy respectively under contract for 6 and 4 years. Two good guys to have just locked up. And you know, we talked about it a few weeks back, how if we went into training camp without extensions for these two individuals, it was going to cause a little bit of concern for us. But now, feeling good. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some Jimmy Graham. We have some Russell Wilson news. Poster news, Adam. I feel like we've talked about posters all off season, and here we have some new news from the guys who made some incredible posters that hung up in our bedrooms as in our young lives. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, they're brushing off the printing presses from 20 years ago.
Yes.
And coming up with some new stuff. I'm really excited about it. It's pretty fun. I'm hoping that this isn't the first and last. You know what I mean? Like, but we'll get to it.
Yeah,
we'll get to it.
We'll get to that. And then we have a talk with Oscar from the Better Rivals podcast. You know, we debated, Adam, whether or not we even have a 49ers show just based on how the rivalry has gone downhill. But I'm really glad that we did. I'm glad we had Oscar on. I'm glad we got to talk some San Francisco 49ers. And that's going to be a big part of our Know Your Rival, the last entry of our Know Your Rival series this summer.
Yep, absolutely. Oscar was great. You're going to get a lot of great information about the 49ers, guys that I honestly hadn't heard about. And it's just cool to get their perspective. And again, to hear them kind of expound on what their expectations are for the Seahawks going forward, too. So stay tuned for that. It's a great conversation. Oscar's a pro's pro, no doubt.
Yeah, my favorite part is how we discovered a new term called the Walsh lobe, that portion of the brain that 49ers have who have lived through the 80s. So tune in, listen for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a conversation with the neighbor about the Walsh lobe. She's an old 49ers fan, and she was like, that's the only era that I remember, or, is that era of all the Super Bowls. And I brought up the Walsh lobe, and she's like, yeah. So
I think we may have coined a new phrase here.
Yeah, this is a thing.
Well, let's get into it. Of course, the biggest news, like we mentioned, John Schneider, his 5-year extension, Pete Carroll, 3 years. There's no dollar amounts. There generally aren't dollar amounts, but you can expect that these two guys are now the top paid, if not at the very least among the top paid in their respective positions.
Yeah, I've seen a couple guys who have knowledge of these sort of contracts. I think one was Darren Ravel and one was John Clayton. And I think John Clayton was saying that Pete's probably around $10 million a year, which is kind of where Belichick is rumored to be.
Yeah, Belichick's, I think, rumored to be a little bit above that, but he does have the GM and the head coach duties.
Right. And Schneider being a little above $4 million a year, which again is a little above Ozzie Newsome, somewhere in there.
He deserves to be the top paid GM.
Oh, yeah. No, you think about the accomplishments of the Seahawks underneath these two guys. I mean, the amount of division titles, the amount of championship game wins, Super Bowl rings. I mean, geez. I mean, what else is there? I mean, it's clearly the best run in Seattle Seahawks history has been under this regime. And now we get to think about the next 2, 3, 4 years without worrying about where these two guys are going. And man, I don't know about you, Brandon. That gives me a tremendous amount of comfort because I want this nucleus, this Schneider Carroll nucleus to last forever. I want Pete to find the Fountain of Youth or the cup from Indiana Jones, you know?
Yeah.
And that needs to happen.
Well, it may have. I mean, listen to Schneider and his comments after signing the contract. He went on the radio. He was talking to John Clayton. And to hear him talk about Pete is he talks about Pete being like a brother. It's not like, a fatherly figure. It's someone who's a peer, and just the amount of energy that Coach Carroll has. You know, the Rebecca in L.A., she brought up the question on our Facebook group of why the discrepancy in the number of years. And, Pete Carroll extended for 3, Schneider for 5. And you kind of like it to match up. But I think there's a really good reason why it doesn't.
It's a great point, Brandon, because it really is a really great reason for it. And it's a pretty simple one. Pete's old. Like that's it. I mean, 64 years old, and they're extending him until he's about 67. I mean, not that he wouldn't have the ability to work past that. I mean, I think Marv Levy could have been an effective coach for another 4 or 5 years in the league, and he was about Pete's age when they were ending that 4 Super Bowls in a row run. But how long do you want to work? How long do you want to continue to do that? I'm surprised that four total years going forward. I'm surprised it's that much if you're counting this year, because I guess I thought maybe 3 total is kind of where my gut said.
So a 2-year extension is kind of what you were thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So this, I'm excited, man. 1 extra year of Pete. Yeah, I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
To me, it wasn't so much about age, because you listen to people talk about how Coach Carroll just doesn't seem as old as he is. To me, 3 years, you have another opportunity to negotiate your next contract. And if you have the guys on the team, you have Russell Wilson, you have a lot of these guys on defense locked up. Coach Carroll could be looking, when he does, another 2-year extension, 3 years down the road from now, he could be looking at a pretty big payday to finish off his career too. Why extend for 5 when you can extend for 3 and you're going to be good at the end of 3 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with this group of talent. I mean,
it's not just about age; it's about money, Adam.
Age and money. All right, but I mean, there's not a ton to say about this story other than thank God. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I think we both felt like it was going to happen, right? We both felt like it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when.
When, exactly. It's interesting that we have this news in this show, because it's the show where we're talking 49ers, and just the excitement that we have about our GM, about our coach. Yeah. Just think about that as you listen to Oscar talk about some of his feelings with the 49ers and not knowing who their quarterback might be. Like, the 49ers fans are just trying to answer right now some basic questions, like, who's going to be our quarterback? Are we going to be able to protect our quarterback? Like, that's the one commonality in questions I think that we have between the 49ers and the Seahawks, right? Is, do we have the right personnel to be able to protect the quarterback? But other than that, and they have solid personnel on the defensive line, right? So those are really the two commonalities between this team, but there's so many more questions, and we're going to get into that with Oscar. But the other big piece of news, Jimmy Graham says he's going to be ready. Ian Rappaport reporting Graham is going to be ready to go for the start of the season. And that is exciting, because we keep hearing that from some people saying, oh, well, he could, and it could still happen. There's a lot of time left before the season starts. But the concern that he could start on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, and to hear that optimism that he's going to be ready for the season, that has me fired up too.
Oh, without question. I mean, Jimmy's going to be a big part of what we do again this year. And I know some people are a little down on it because it seemed like the offense took off when he left, but it was more a function of the offensive line gelling it finally, and then hitting the quicker passing game where the offense really took off. You now insert Jimmy Graham into that as well. And with that plethora of weapons, man. Like, the passing game should be pretty strong this year. And we've all been a little concerned about Jimmy because this is a difficult injury to come back from. This is one that not a lot of guys have, number one, even suffered. And number two, I mean, you look at like Victor Cruz coming back from it, and because he's compensating for that, you know, he has a different injury and he's out for a whole nother season. So you're just hoping that the Seattle trainers have him on the right track and everything. And for the athlete to say that he is confident in his body and he's feeling good and he feels like it's going to happen, that's probably about the best news possible. I mean, we heard the same kind of thing from Thomas Rawls, I believe it was last week or the week before. Mm-hmm. And, man, having those two guys ready to rock week one with the rest of this core, it's going to be a fun season, Brandon.
That's
what
I'm saying.
Be a fun season.
This just, the optimism that I have from this last week, it's overflowing.
Your cup runneth over in optimism. Is that how that's working for you right now?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I know mine is, definitely. There's no doubt about it.
And we're going to get into that, too, with our next show coming up. I think we're going to get into some of those season expectations and talk to some fellow contributors to, you know, people who, like Clinton Bonner, who post to our the 3 and 3 out to our website, and Sam Smith, who does a lot of blogging. Jenny Ghosts, I think it's time to bring her back on. Get some of these folks, get their opinions of their expectations. Because, you know, if you listen to us over and over and over, you probably know where we come out, but getting some of those opinions of other fellow Seahawks fans that you may not get to hear as much, it'll be interesting to hear.
Another thing I'm looking forward to, though, Brandon, is to spend $20 and get a poster that can hang next to the Blue Angel Steve Largent poster that you so generously donated for my wall. Like, this is exciting news.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, the fact that, but our 3-year podiversary is coming up. And
you're right.
I, in fact, already did put in an order of the Armed and Dangerous poster of Russell Wilson by the same guys coming out of retirement that did the Land of Oz poster, the Kenny Easley Enforcer poster, the like you said, the Steve Largent Blue Angel poster. The same guys that did all these great posters now back and matching kind of that same type of feeling that you get with the Russell Wilson poster. And see, I'm interested to hear your take on this, Adam, because a lot of people are panning this Armed and Dangerous poster by Russell Wilson. And I get the sense of maybe there's a throwback essence to it that I think maybe they're missing.
So the Costicos brothers, that's the name of the company that
right,
did the posters. And those were the guys that had all the posters when you went to the fair, right? And he tried to, like, you know, throw a dart at something and try to win it, right? Like,
if it was an athlete poster, they probably did it.
If it was
a good one.
Yeah, it was cool. And look, are those posters, as you look back on them, like, we saw the Boz, Largent, and Russ all standing with their posters in one picture, correct? Right. Were they all a little cheesy?
They're all a little cheesy.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
That's the style. That's the point. Like, yeah, this Armed and Dangerous one is cheesy as all get out. It is.
That's the point.
It kind of matches your quarterback's personality, too, by the way.
Right.
So, because it matches the style and it is throwback. See, that's what I think people are missing, Brandon. Just like you said, it's a vintage thing that they're missing on here. And there's a feel. There's a early 90s feel to the Russell Wilson poster that just came out, and I think they nailed it.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. Is it cheesy? Yeah, I'm hanging it on my wall. Of course. I mean, and look, the idea that they made the play on the Danger Russ thing, like, you know, that's exactly what they had to do.
Right.
It was smart.
No, it's really smart, and also it has that Armed and Dangerous, in 1986 movie with John Candy. You know, if you have a little throwback to the 80s there too.
Yeah, I'm almost surprised though. No, so they kind of went military themed, right?
Yeah.
With this Armed and Dangerous thing.
He looks like Rambo, doesn't he?
He does. He looks pretty jacked. And then the other thing is, but he's like holding a Wanted poster, like kind of crumpled up in his hand.
Yeah.
See, when I saw the Wanted poster, I was like, oh, they missed the mark. They needed to go Western. Needed to be armed and dangerous like Billy the Kid, or like something like that. I think I would have liked that slightly better. But
I kind of like all the cases of ammunition and bombs. Behind him.
Did it remind you of your Navy days? Did you get a little throwback there?
A little bit. Yeah. Well, nice. And, Russell Wilson, I was just, it was unfortunate they didn't label one of those cases Sexy Deep Balls.
Oh, that's a whiff.
I know.
If you're going to pan him, that's the one thing you can.
They got
pan
the
him
no
for,
time
right?
to sleep clock in there with no hands on it, though. I don't know if you saw that.
I did miss that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Down in the lower left corner. See, when we get this poster up on your wall, you're going to see some of the detail that they put into this. Pretty incredible.
I think it was well done for the spirit of the Cosacos Brothers poster.
And it's for charity.
Yeah, exactly. Every single dollar is going to charity. So that's pretty sweet. I'm hoping this isn't the last one, man. I want to see an Earl. I want to see an Earl Thomas one, dude. I want an Earl Thomas poster so bad. Or a Bam Bam Cam poster. A Bam Bam.
They could redo. They could bring back the Enforcer poster and redo it with Cam.
There you go. I think Cam deserves his own kind of theme, though. There's a way to do this. I'm just saying.
It could be.
Look, if
you
it's
could
for
do
charity,
Dark Knight. Yeah, that would be the other way to do it, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, enough poster nerd out. Yeah.
Well, what do you say we get into this conversation with Oscar of the Better Rivals podcast, talk a little bit of 49ers and what they're doing this year, how the offseason has gone, and talk about the Walsh lobe.
Awesome.
Trying to save his last 2 timeouts. Calls the play. His wide receiver slotted on the far side. Shotgun for Kaepernick. Takes the snap. Looks. Fires near side. Going for the end zone. Ball is tipped up and after it. Is it picked up? Is it picked off? It is! It's picked off in the end zone! The Seahawks intercept in the end zone! Richard Sherman tips it! Malcolm Smith picks it off in the end zone! Intended in the far corner! The Seahawks are going to run this baby down! We are going to New Jersey! Holy smoke! The defense does it again! Holy catfish!
This week, we welcome on Oscar from the Better Rivals podcast to talk about the NFC West rival San Francisco 49ers. We're just going to go with Oscar because his new in-laws are still trying to learn how to pronounce his last name, too. So, Oscar, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, gentlemen. And that is absolutely true. You did not just make that up. My new family is actually still debating about how to pronounce my last name.
And it's not like you and your now wife have been together for like just a couple months. Like,
No. I did not mail order her, contrary to popular belief. She is, a native Houstonite, and so her family's all from Texas. And yeah, they're just not super comfortable with Spanish sounding last names. So they just say Oscar and nod and smile. And they're super sweet, and they say bless your heart a lot. So
well, there you go. That's good. That's good to hear. Well, Oscar, we got some 49ers stuff to talk about because it's been a bit of all the teams in the NFC West so far. I think the 49ers have had one of the more interesting off seasons. The Rams traded away all their draft picks. That was kind of neat to get the top pick. I think we were all happy that they didn't just get any more guys on their defensive line. That was nice to see, but you guys had an entire coaching overhaul in this offseason, and to me, that's a little bit more interesting. How has it felt to you as a 49ers fan this offseason?
I mean, interesting is in and of itself an interesting choice of words. I wouldn't necessarily say it was an interesting offseason. It was an offseason that needed to happen. I personally am excited about the new coaching change and about Chip Kelly. Tom Sula, while, and we said this before, I'm sure he's a phenomenal human being. And he's a great defensive line coach. I would probably say he's, in terms of elite defensive line coaches, he's probably right up there in terms of the NFL. Problem is, he got served into a job that he wasn't ready for, that he couldn't really get his arms around. And having him be there another year just was not an option. And I wasn't expecting it. I thought he was going to get a second year. But I'm glad they did what they needed to do. They fired him, cleaned house. And Chip Kelly, I think, is a good coach. I think he's not a great personnel evaluator. But that's great because that's what Trent Baalke's there for. And he's certainly not relinquishing control or power. So I think in that regard, it was certainly interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about free agency a little bit later. But in that regard, in terms of acquisition of talent, it wasn't necessarily all that interesting. But at the very least, the change in coaching staff is going to make the 49ers at least competitive in games where they were not competitive before.
Okay, so we all know the name Chip Kelly, right, Oscar? But you also have a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator in Curtis Modkins and Jim O'Neill. What do we need to know about him? Because honestly, as a Hawks fan, I don't know who these guys are.
Yeah, and honestly, not a lot of people knew who Curtis Modkins was before he became the offensive coordinator. And I think we'll start with the offensive coordinator first because that one is not as interesting. It is really in Chip Kelly's kind of coaching scheme. the offensive coordinator is effectively the run game coordinator. Like, that's what he's going to do. This is Chip Kelly's offense. This is Chip Kelly's team. He's going to build the structure, the play sheet, the play call, and do probably some of the game planning with help from, I'm sure, the rest of his staff. But really what he did was he brought in Curtis Modkins, who's a power run specialist. He came from Detroit. And that's what Curtis Modkins has done all of his life. He is, or really in not all of his life, right? He didn't come out of the womb saying like, power run game to the right? But
A-gap.
Right? Hit the A-gap.
That was his first words.
Exactly. But this is a guy who has always been tied to successful running teams. And he really helped turn around the Lions rushing attack when they were kind of near the bottom of the league. And then he took over as run game coordinator with the new offensive coordinator, all-time name, Jim Bob Cooter. And Curtis Modkins came in as the run game coordinator and really helped elevate that run game a bit. So in San Francisco, what you'll probably see from Curtis Modkins is really an influence in the running game. Contrary to popular belief, Chip does run some power concepts, even though his preferred run is an inside zone or an outside zone. And so that's what you're going to see from Curtis Modkins, is hopefully a bit more of the power influence. Definitely going to see Curtis imprints all over the running game, and Chip is still going to do what he does in the passing game. Now, on the other side of the ball, you've got Jim O'Neill. And Jim O'Neill is really kind of coming out of the shadow of of Mike Pettin, his former boss in Cleveland. And Mike Pettin, of course, comes off of the Rex Ryan coaching tree. And he's always been under that shadow. And you didn't know whether or not it was Mike Pettin in Cleveland that was the architect of that fairly successful 2014 defense. And then in 2015, they had a huge drop off. And many people thought that it was because Mike Pettin handed more over to Jim O'Neill. And so it's going to be interesting. We don't know a lot about Jim O'Neill. We know that he comes from that Rex Ryan philosophy. So we know he wants to blitz. We know he's going to have an attacking defense. We know he's going to run a 3-4. And we know that the defense is going to be his domain, even though Chip has some philosophical principles he wants his coaches to adhere to, right? The 3-4, the attacking style. It's going to be interesting to see the implementation of that particular defense that Jim O'Neill brings, because it is going to be new. There isn't a whole lot out there, and it could go one of two ways. It could be that he is indeed someone who has ridden the coattails of someone like a Mike Pettin, or it could be that, he is coming into his own and he's got maybe a couple of unique pieces in San Francisco that will help him deploy a defense that's at least moderately successful. So I think that's really where the interesting thing is going to be for the 49ers this year, outside of the typical Chip Kelly kind of offensive stuff that you're going to see and that you may be used to.
So we've covered the coaching. And obviously you keep your general manager. How are 49ers fans feeling about the front office side?
Well, one of the questions that we get a lot from fans is, if the 49ers have a bad year this year, is Trent Baalke out? And that means that the kind of impetus behind that question is that people are generally not happy with Trent Baalke right now. Trent Baalke, I think, got a little too much credit when the 49ers are really good and gets a little too much blame now that the 49ers are bad. There are some interpersonal things with Trent Baalke. Yes, I think that's not, you shouldn't necessarily gloss over that, even though I'm about to. That story's been beaten to the ground. It is what it is, right? But I think if you look at what a GM is supposed to do, they're really supposed to evaluate talent and value talent. Those are the key things that a general manager, I think, should do. Evaluating talent, how good are you coming out of college? How good are you in the NFL to sign free agents? And then also part of that, I think, is draft, moving around and getting picks. And then valuing talent, how much do we pay you? Do we pay you outsized contracts? Do we pay you, $40 million signing bonus and then cut you 2 years later? Those are the kinds of things that you don't want to see from a general manager. And by and large, Trent Baalke does most of those things fairly well. What he doesn't do well is he doesn't draft terribly well. And so that, I think, is what people are glomming onto and saying, like, oh my God, I can't take another injured second round pick, or I can't take another first round wide receiver that doesn't pan out. And yeah, those definitely are faults of Trent Baalke. I think he's got a pretty big blind spot when it comes to wide receivers and generally kind of offensive players not called an offensive line, or perhaps a tight end. But I think that's what people are unhappy with specifically, is Trent Baalke and his ability to draft players And so that's probably where you're seeing the most discontent in terms of the front office with fans in the 49ers.
Well, and in the past, you kind of feel like he had a little bit of latitude, right, with the draft, because there did seem to be so much depth of talent at any given position. So coming out of this year's draft, how are 49ers fans feeling? Are you positive about because now you're drafting for need, whereas opposed to the last few years, you could take, some of these guys that were maybe questionable on whether or not they could come back. How are you feeling after this year?
I think this year, and I'm usually a bit more cautious when it comes to saying whether or not a draft class is good or not good. I do think you have to wait the requisite 3 or 4 years to say that class was good or not good. There are initial impressions, and this is exactly what this is an initial impression of that draft. I think it's pretty good. The top pick, DeForest Buckner, it fit a need, and I think he was one of the top 4 players in this draft. You can quibble about whether he was 4, 5, 6, 7, but he was definitely a top 10 talent, and that's what we needed on the 49ers. We needed an infusion of that top 10 talent. I think we needed a guard, Joshua Garnett, probably a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. But
has he signed yet, or is he still holding out?
No, he's signed. He should be signed now. And so I think that those 2 picks, that they did fit a need, and they were good picks. You could argue whether Garnett was going to be there in the second round. Did they need to trade up? But at that point, whether you draft a guy at the bottom of the first, or whether you get him, in like the top third of the second round, really you get that extra year option. And what's 6 spots if you think it's your guy? If he ends up being an 8-year starter, no one's going to remember that it cost us like some random 6-round pick.
Right.
And so you go down there and you've got a lot of cornerbacks. You've got a couple of people there at the bottom that are good upside players. Ronald Blair is going to be someone that, if you know Pete Carroll and his P-Spark philosophy, Ronald Blair is going to be good because he's a high P-Spark athlete. And then from there, it's just a bunch of other people that may not even make the team this year. You look at rounds 5 and 6, they're just, they're camp fodder. Hopefully they turn into something else. But at the top of the draft, it did fit need. They are skilled players. And so far, Buckner and Armstead, bookend defensive ends, those guys could do some disruptive things. And so I think 49er fans are really, really excited about the addition of Buckner.
So let's talk a little bit about the defense, Oscar, because I think that's probably the side of the ball that 49ers fans have to feel the most excited about when you're looking at the roster as a whole. I think you just mentioned Armstead and Buckner being on the outside and Ian Williams being there at nose tackle. And, with Glenn Dorsey in the rotation, too. The defensive line seems pretty set. The linebackers have a lot of familiar names, and Brooks Bowman and Aaron Lynch. Now, the secondary, to me, is where it seems like there may be some holes in that. I don't know. What's your overall impression of the roster going into camp?
So on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line is most definitely the strongest position group for the entire team. It is a deep area. It's also an area with some talent. There's some injury concerns with Ian Williams. He actually signed a 5-year deal, and then it turns out that his ankle wasn't as healthy as we thought it was. So after we announced the signing of a 5-year deal, we're like, whoa, hold on, pump the brakes. We're actually going to make that a 1-year deal with game-based incentives. So that was a bit of a blow. But if he can indeed fully recover from his injury, I think he is a top defensive line talent. I think people forget about Quentin Dial because he was a 5th-round pick, but he's also been very good. Defensive line has been really a strength, and I think will be a strength for the 49ers this year. The secondary, I think, is better. It's not great, but it is better. I think that you've got now Jimmy Ward has earned a starting role at outside cornerback, whereas before he was the nickel corner. And he's going to start outside of Tremaine Brock. If Dante Johnson doesn't beat Tremaine Brock for a starting role at some point over the course of the year, that's surprising to me. But I think that our defensive backs are actually young and they can develop into really, really solid starters. Jaquaski Tart, Antoine Bethea, Eric Reed, a group of safeties that are, not necessarily the best. Antoine Bethea is aging. He's a little slower. Eric Reed is good, but not great. And Jaquaski Tart, I think, is someone that's a chess piece. You can move him kind of around different places on the defense. So I think it's not bad. It's the linebackers that are a little concerning because you've got Navarro Bowman, who is rounding back into form. But then after him, you've got really no one else. You've got Michael Wilhoit, Gerald Hodges, and Ray Armstrong. Good luck if you knew the name Ray Armstrong. That's awesome, man. You're doing your research. He came over from Oakland, and you could argue about whether or not the linebackers are even going to be an important part of the scheme. But I think if you were to point to a weak spot, I would say it's going to be the second linebacker on the field, and it's going to be one of the cornerbacks, and maybe a safety. So it's probably not going to be as bad as it was last year, but they're certainly not going to be, top 10 defense.
Well, now one of the linebackers you didn't mention, and maybe that's because he's not going to be starting the year, but Aaron Lynch. How is that going to impact this team? And obviously, as a Seahawks fan, I'll be happy that Aaron Lynch isn't there week 3.
Yeah, that's really going to suck. Aaron Lynch is easily, I think, he is the best pass rusher on the team by far. And I think you can make a really solid case that he is, maybe in the top 3 talented players on the roster, full stop.
Yeah.
And he is, he's really good. He doesn't have the sack numbers that you would think. He doesn't have the sack numbers that maybe, oh God, I'm forgetting his name now. See, this is what happens when you leave because of DUIs. Alden Smith, there it is.
Sure.
He doesn't have the flashy sack numbers that Alden Smith had, but he does get pressure. He does get to the quarterback. And Russell Wilson knows, right? Aaron Lynch is the guy he's got to worry about in his face. And so I think that definitely hurts. But when he comes back, he's certainly going to be a factor. The other side, though, you've got Ahmad Brooks, who is on the definite downside of his career. There's a solid chance that he gets more false starts or offside penalties than he does sacks.
Sounds exactly like Michael Bennett.
That's a legit possibility. That he might not even play too, because he has pending sexual assault charges that he's got to figure out. So other than him, you've got Eli Harold, who gained 24 to 30 pounds this offseason. And anytime that happens, you're almost waiting for the PED shoe to drop. So, it's at that point you're working off of like Corey Lemonnier and Marcus Rush, who, again, if you know that far down the roster, you should be doing this instead of me.
Man, did Jim Harbaugh jinx you guys like 3 years ago when he said that the 49ers were the team that did everything right? Because it seems like ever since he said that, you guys have led in either PED suspensions or suspensions for other types of reasons. I blame Harbaugh for this.
Well, I blame Harbaugh for a lot of things, and most of them good, some of them bad. But this is just, I think, terrible luck of the draw. And we actually haven't had many, if any, that I can remember, PED suspensions. They've all been either substance abuse or DUI related, or kind of violence or sexual assault related with Ahmad Brooks, specifically Ray. God, I forget his name too. The guy who went to Chicago, McDonald. There it is. Mm-hmm. And see, once I know all my Niners, but
once they leave the team, just jettison them from the brain.
I have enough brain space for only so much.
90-man roster.
It's not Barely. A lot. and the
80s 49ers.
Hey, you know what? That's what every single Niners fan has, actually a little spot in their brain. It's like right by the medulla oblongata. And it's just a little Lombardi trophy shaped item that just remembers all of the 80s stuff.
Right.
And it's like a black spot, like a little amnesia, all the way up until Jim Harbaugh. And now
I think they just call that the Walsh lobe, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's the Walsh lobe. I think that works out. But yeah, so I think the outside linebackers and the pass rush are going to be kind of terrible. And you're really looking to someone like DeForest Buckner or Eric Armstead to kind of fill that gap if we can. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the lack of pass rush, I think, this season.
Well, you've definitely been building it with through the draft. That'll be important. But let's talk about the other side of the pass rush and whether or not the offensive line, what they can do this year, protecting whichever quarterback you guys decide to start, whether it's Blaine Gabbert or Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, well, we'll get to the quarterbacks here in a second, but the offensive line, oh man, once we got rid of, the grandiose talent that was the tuba player, Jordan Devey, I think, angels sang, doves flew, and everyone in Ninerland rejoiced because that guy was absolute trash. His most notable contribution in an ESPN graphic was played the tuba and almost got Tom Brady killed. I'm pretty sure that was actually on the graphic on ESPN. And he just wasn't very good. He was a walking turnstile. And now that he's gone, you have, Jordan Tiller and the rookie Josh Garnett competing for that right guard spot. Either one of them is going to be an upgrade. I think Garnett's probably a little bit better fit for Chip Kelly's offense, than Tiller is. Tiller's a bigger mauler, but either one of them is going to be an upgrade. But upgrade to what, right? Upgrade to, Pro Bowl level? No. But at least upgrade to competence, that's something. Kilgore is going to be an upgrade over Marcus Martin. Marcus Martin was a starting center who I think, based on Pro Football Focus's rankings, was at one point in the year ranked 54th out of 55 eligible centers.
Ouch.
Meaning that there were literally backups that had playing time that were ranked higher and did better than Marcus Martin. So this is, again, an upgrade. It's an addition by subtraction. Marcus Martin is going to be battling for a roster spot. I think he'll probably still keep one, but Daniel Kilgore, definitely an upgrade. You've got Zane Beadles at the left guard position, journeyman guy. He prefers zone blocking, but how good is he going to be? I don't know. Definitely not as good, I don't think, as Alex Boone was. And then you've got old man Joe Staley, who is, again, one of the top 3 players on the team and one of the premier left tackles, I think, in the league. He's just criminally underrated and criminally underpaid.
Yeah, definitely. You guys you talk about Trent Baalke and his ability to get value. Staley at, gosh, what is he, like right around $5-6 million a year for a solid left tackle? It's crazy.
Yeah. It's not a lot. We actually did some player rankings not too long ago, and we were looking at Staley's contract. And he is right now, I think, like the 10th ranked, based on average cost per year. He is, I think, 10th for left tackles or offensive tackles total. Because, of course, every year other people are going to make more money and push him farther down the list. Up until his 34th year, meaning that he is 34 years old, he is never going to make more than top 10 tackle money. And at 34, he's not going to get another big deal. So, I mean, this really was, we got almost a whole prime of his career for near peanuts. And people always point to Trent Baalke and say, oh my God, he drafted A.J. Jenkins. And yes, he did. But he also was able to get a lot of production from a lot of players for not very much money. And that isn't in and of itself a skill. But finally, on the offensive line, you've got the right tackle. Right now, that's slated to be Eric Piers. Honestly, if it was your Aunt Betsy, that's probably a bit of an upgrade. Eric Piers is a journeyman right tackle who shouldn't be there, but Anthony Davis decided that he wanted to go travel instead of play football for his health or whatever it was. And can't blame a guy for protecting his brain, but you can blame him for saying, I'm going to apply for reinstatement and then not actually ever applying for reinstatement. So at this point, I don't think the team's counting on him. His fans aren't certainly counting on him. And so I think you've got Eric Piers slotted in at the right tackle position. And so you've got a left side that's a little better, not all that much better. You've got, you've got a right side that's a little better, but not all that much better. You've got a downgrade at left guard. Who knows what it means, but it means that a quarterback's probably going to be running for their life at some point.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Pro Football Focus numbers here for each one of these guys along the offensive line. And apart from Staley, I mean, it's guys in the 30s and 40s, out of a ranking of 100. And
kind of sea hockey.
It does feel kind of sea hockey. I think that Beatles number is low, though, because I think he just had a bad year last year. I think you guys have upgraded the left side of the line for sure, but I would be a little bit worried about that right side.
Yeah, the right side is a trouble spot. I think you're probably right about Beatles. I think we got him on a good deal because he did have a bad year last year in Jacksonville. The year before that, he wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible.
Yeah, he was okay.
Yeah, so those rankings, those like 0 to 100 normalized ratings, those are interesting because if I remember correctly, it like takes an aggregate over 2 years and it has some weird adjustments and factoring. And I don't trust those numbers from PFF as much as I did their individual game plus minus rankings.
Yeah.
But it's still by that I don't mean to say that these guys should be in the 80s, right? They're just not good. And I think Kilgore is an upgrade. I think Beatles probably isn't, but overall, it's definitely a question mark.
Let's take a break from all these guys that are kind of feel like a downer. Let's talk about somebody you're excited about, like Bruce Ellington. You guys just did your recent show on Wednesday, and Bruce Ellington was a guy that you feel like it sounds like you guys think this could be a year for Ellington to kind of come out.
Absolutely. I'm so high on Bruce Ellington, and that's not a strain of marijuana. It is actually something that I think that it is a combination of skill and talent meeting opportunity and system. And that's really what you want. And that's really what you need out of a team that really hasn't always maximized its talent, especially at the 49ers, especially at the wide receiver position, mostly because of the type of offense that we ran. But, in limited sample, Bruce Ellington has succeeded against coverage. There was Matt Harmon did a piece on him called The Reception Perception, which is really good. If you haven't read it or haven't read his stuff, I would definitely recommend it. But in that, he talks specifically about Bruce Ellington and how he is very successful as an explosive player on deep routes. His success rate on 9 routes or deep routes is over 60%, which it puts him in elite deep threat coverage, in elite deep threat kind of area. Mm-hmm. When you look at the curl route, which is kind of the complementary thing to that 9 route, his success rate is 81%, which again is off the charts. And these are small sample sizes, right? He didn't do a whole lot of playing last year. He was hampered by injury a bit, and there wasn't very many opportunities for him to play. But he beats coverage left and right. I mean, against man coverage, his success rate is 70%, which is well above average. Against zone, it was 81%, well above average. Even against press coverage, because he's not a big dude, he's 5'9", 81% success rate versus press. This is a wide receiver who is skilled. He's a high spark athlete. He was in the 93rd percentile of NFL wide receivers when he was drafted. So you've got someone who's an athlete. You've got someone who's been successful at the NFL level in limited duty. And now you've got an offense that puts 3 wide receivers out like 60% of the time. And you've got Jordan Matthews, who ran the second most plays from the slot, which is, we think, where Bruce Ellington's going to line up most of the time. So I think you have opportunity, you've got skill, and you've got a coach that's going to love to throw the ball. And even if he doesn't, we're going to be behind a lot. So basically what I'm saying is draft Ellington in fantasy somewhere near the 8th round, maybe the 10th, and stash him. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it's an 8th round pick.
So, Oscar, you just mentioned the idea that the possibility the Niners are down a lot, so you're throwing the ball a lot. But, one of the guys that I feel like could be a bright spot for you guys this year is Carlos Hyde. He's a guy that has all the talent in the world, seemingly. And one thing that I feel like Chip Kelly doesn't get enough credit for is his dedication to running the football. Now, I understand he didn't do it with DeMarco Murray, but that was a terrible scheme fit for DeMarco Murray. And I'm not even sure DeMarco Murray's good on top of all that. But what's your kind of sense of Carlos Hyde's upside this year? Because I know everybody's talking a lot about Todd Gurley, David Johnson, and Thomas Rawls. Is everybody sleeping on Carlos Hyde?
I don't think people are necessarily sleeping on Carlos Hyde. I think he's got 2 things working against him. One is his injury history. He's been in the NFL for 2 years, and he's not been able to play a full season for both of those years. One of those years, he was a backup to Frank Gore. The next year, he was the primary back, but he only played in, I think, 7 games before going on injured reserve. So his injury history is definitely a concern. That's going to be the big question for Carlos Hyde. I do think he's a scheme fit for this offense. I think that he did very, very well in a cousin to Chip Kelly's offense, which is the Urban Meyer spread, which still, favored the zone, had some zone read elements. This is a player who can put his foot in the ground and just score. He shoots through that offensive line, and he knows how to read zone blocks. And that's good because not all backs can. I think Arian Foster is a great example of a back that can read zone blocks really well. And so I think that this scheme is tailor-made for a back like Carlos Hyde. Now, can he stay healthy? We'll see. Is he going to have necessarily the pass-catching numbers that you would hope? I don't know. His hands are a little suspect at times, but I think that's the first thing working against him. I think you've got the kind of injury history. And 2, you do have this issue of opportunity. You need to be able to run the ball, 20, 25 times a game in order to rack up these big performances. And so I think what you'll probably see from Carlos Hyde is you'll probably see him, if he's able to stay healthy, approach a 1,000-yard season, but it's going to be those uneven seasons that fantasy owners really hate, where it's like 50 yards, 80 yards, 60 yards, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, the 49ers won that game. And it wasn't because they ran him and they won. It's because they were up in the 3rd and 4th quarter and they ran him to preserve the lead, right? You don't run to win. You win when you run. Wait, no, the other way around. Yeah. You don't win because you ran. You run the ball out once you're leading. So I think that's probably the 2 things that are working against him is just opportunity and a potential injury history.
And, I think Adam brought up a good point, though, that Chip Kelly, people tend to think of him as a guy who just is a fierce passing attack. But he does focus on the run game.
Absolutely. He is. That's, I think, one of I think we've been in the Chip Kelly milieu, if you will, for so long that we forget some of the outside perceptions of the Chip Kelly offense. And, you hear, it's just a spread passing offense and it's never going to work in the NFL. And I mean, the core of Chip Kelly's philosophy is the inside zone run. He is a spread to run coach, where you've got other coaches who are spread to pass. Think of air raid coaches like Mike Leach in Texas Tech. Think of some of the more pass-happy spread offenses like Baylor and Art Briles. Well, I guess he's no longer at Baylor, womp womp. But these are coaches who like to spread you out so they can pass the ball. Chip Kelly likes to spread you out so that he can run the ball down your throat. And that is a different philosophy. And his offense is indeed built off of the inside zone and the outside zone. Those are his bread and butter runs. And that's where the zone read comes in. And then you've got some power sweeps and counter trays and whatnot that he'll like to run. But ultimately, Chip Kelly would like to run the ball, 25, 32 times a game. And that is part of his philosophy. Now, of course, in order to do that, you have to win or be up such that you do want to run the ball. And I just don't think the 49ers are going to find themselves in that kind of situation often.
All right, Oscar, we've put it off long enough. I'm bringing up Pro Football Focus. We talked about their numbers a little bit, but they had a list, a ranking of the quarterback situations of all the teams in the league. And number 31 on that list, San Francisco 49ers. Agree or disagree?
Even if I disagree slightly because of the fan in me, I probably wouldn't move them up that much farther. I think the silver lining for the 49ers, because if you look at recency and you look at what the quarterback position was last year, absolutely, they are near or at the bottom of the league in terms of quarterback situation. But I think the silver lining for 49ers fans is this idea of potential. And I'm not talking about Blaine Gabbert's potential. I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick's potential. Because if you can get him back to 2012, 2013, Colin Kaepernick, you're good enough to have a playoff quarterback. I don't think that Colin Kaepernick was as good as many people thought he was when the 49ers were in NFC Championship games and going to a Super Bowl. But I don't think that, but I think that he can get back to an average to above average quarterback. And if Chip Kelly can do that with Nick Foles, I can only imagine the things that he can do with Colin Kaepernick. Now, is Colin Kaepernick beyond repair? Is he trying to do too much with his legs? Does he not trust his wide receivers enough? Maybe. These are all things that can definitely hold him back. Is Blaine Gabbert the answer? I don't think so. I think both of them are probably just about the same overall, even though they do different things well. Mm-hmm. So, if I can see either one starting, I think Colin Kaepernick will start more games. I think even they both will probably get starts at some point in the year. But I think Colin Kaepernick will start more games and he will eventually be the answer. For the 49ers, I think that's the best outcome for the 49ers. But Chip Kelly isn't someone who's going to play favorites. If Blaine Gabbert's out dueling Kaepernick, then Blaine Gabbert will play. And that's that. But I do think that it's not too far off, even if the fan in me wants to raise that ranking a little bit.
I think a lot of it does hinge on that question, right? And so thinking about that, what is the best case scenario for the 49ers this year?
I think the best case scenario is that the 49ers look competitive. And I know that sounds almost like a cop-out because it's not attaching a win or loss total to it. But you think of some of the games last year. I mean, you think about that first game against Arizona. You think about that 4-interception performance against Arizona. You think about that blowout in Pittsburgh. That looked like a preseason game, but it was like week 3 or week 2 or something like that. There's no way that the 49ers can continue to put that product out on the field and be that bad. There's just no way to do it. And I think that Chip Kelly's a good enough coach that won't happen. I think they'll probably be around 6 wins. I think best case scenario, 9 wins. 9 wins would mean a lot of things went really well for them, I think. And I think that's an aggressive, optimistic total. I think they'll probably be somewhere around that, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8-8 win total. And that's probably where they will end up. But they won't be losing games by 23 points. They won't be losing games, that are decided in the third quarter. There'll be close games. There'll be some heartbreakers. There'll be some games that you think, if they just would have done this, then they would have won that game. And I think that's where you begin to build to season 2. And hopefully the best case scenario is that wherever their record lay, they figure out the quarterback role, whether it's getting rid of Colin Kaepernick and cutting him next year or trading him, whether it's riding, the Yo Gabba Gabbert train, whether it's, using Blaine Gabbert as a backup because he comes pretty inexpensively and he's there for one more year, I think. And that's that. I think figuring out the quarterback would be the best thing that could happen. And then building off of this season, getting another top 15 pick and going from there.
You totally a total missed opportunity, though, Oscar. I was hoping you were going to say that you wanted the team to lose fewer games than the Warriors.
Oh, no. So that's, I don't know. With Kevin Durant, I'm honestly thinking the Warriors could go undefeated, but it doesn't matter because I think this was in the Reddit roast as well. If someone was like, oh, the Warrior or the Niners want to lose fewer games than the Warriors. And someone's like, oh yeah, but they won the same amount of championships. It's like, oh,
yeah,
still
stings a little bit.
Still hurts.
See, as former Sonics fans, Kevin Durant, is always kind of, we've held a special place in our heart for Kevin Durant, I think, because he's kind of always been that guy that's held on to that little piece of himself of the Sonics history. And so it was I think it felt good to a lot of Sonics fans to see him kind of stick it to OKC, even though it was to leave for a team that had won so many games.
Yeah, it's going to be, I went to Texas and I was there as a graduate student when Kevin Durant was playing basketball. So I watched him play when he was at Texas. And so I've always liked him, even though he went to go play for, Oklahoma, Seattle, then Oklahoma. So it's going to be interesting. I think, not to divert from football for too long, but it'll probably take 25 games or so for them to figure it out. But then when they do, they have 3 of probably the best 5 shooters in the NBA on one team.
Yeah.
That's going to be really, really fun to watch. Well, for me, because I'm a Warriors fan.
Well, they are a super team. There's no doubt about it. But to bring it back to football, Oscar, here's what I'm wondering as a 49ers fan. What is your perspective on the Seahawks this year going in? And just kind of your overall view of where they're going to stack up in this division, in this conference, and what are your expectations?
Well, I think it's definitely going to be a battle between Seattle and Arizona for 1 and 2. I think really it all comes down to how good them goodies are, and it's Sierra, it's Russell Wilson. I think that holds the key. If the goodies are there, I think, then Russell Hustle Bustle pulls it out, pulls another magical season. And that's that. But, if he's regretting his goodies decision, then he's going to be down in the dumps. Maybe he ends in divorce and you never know. No, I think
there's no way you could sleep with Ciara and regret your goodies decision.
Hey man, you never know. He didn't try before he buys. All I'm saying.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But it's like being bummed after you buy a Ferrari.
Yeah, because it broke down on the highway. Because those things break down so much.
You're right. That's a good point.
I think it's going to really depend on the health of Carson Palmer. If Carson Palmer is able to stay healthy for 16 games, I think that the Seahawks are going to go in as a wild card. I think with Carson Palmer, Arizona is a completely different team. Without Carson Palmer, I think it's easy for the Seattle Seahawks to go in as maybe, a 2 seed, maybe even a 1 seed. Who knows? It's going to be interesting now that, because we know what Russell Wilson is. He's a good quarterback who's both great within structure and outside of structure. I think now that you can't rely on Marshawn Lynch, you do have a promising, running back, but it's definitely a change in character. The Seahawks changed a bit in character at the end of last year and put a bit more on Russell Wilson. It wasn't so much just all on Marshawn Lynch. And I think the defense is going to be a little interesting. This is what happens with good teams. Players eventually leave, but much like Bill Walsh in the 80s, Pete Carroll has a system. He sticks to a system, and catfish. The system works. It really does. And so I don't see the Seahawks. I see them as a playoff team, definitely. I don't see them, having a drop off. But with a team like the Seahawks, all they got to do is get into the playoffs. Whether they're in there as a wild card or whether they're in there as a 1 seed, once they're in the playoffs, it's a whole different ballgame. And so that's really kind of where I put the Seahawks. Is I hate that they're that good, but you know what? You can't sit here and say, oh, they're terrible, because they're not. They have quarterback figured out. Their offensive line is still going to be Swiss cheese. They've got running backs that can do it. Who would have thought Doug Baldwin's that good? And Ricardo Lockett, holy hell, that guy. He's a rock star. He really
Tyler
is.
Lockett, yeah, our new Lockett.
Yeah. So I think they're going to be good. It's just where they finish in the playoff race and what happens, because I think that you've got a team like Carolina who's shown that you can beat them. I think getting over the Rams twice a year, you guys, for whatever reason, Jeff Fisher loves you guys. And hey, man, he's got to get to 8-8 somehow. He's got to get to 8-8 somehow. And he's the captain of 8-8. Powerful mustache.
Well, and he has to get to 8-8 because, as we talked with the Rams podcast, if Fisher does not get to 8-8, he becomes the most losing coach in the history of the NFL. So he has some added motivation.
Absolutely. I don't know how any coach has turned mediocrity into such a long lasting career.
I don't know.
But you know what? Hey, man, he's good at what he does, and that is being average. So I think that's probably where the division stands. I think at the end of the division, it's going to be Seattle, Arizona 1-2, depending on Palmer, and then I think it's going to be the Rams and the Niners battling for 3-4. And I think if Goff has any wherewithal, he's got enough in him to get them to about 8-8, and that's good for third in the division. And then the Niners round that out there in the caboose.
Well, I want to talk a little bit of Better Rivals podcast before you go, Oscar, because not only do you get to learn about how to defend against spread offense or answer questions like what is gap control, you also talk about the difference between jam and jelly.
Yeah, and apparently we missed a really obvious joke.
I heard that once in Vegas. That was a good joke.
I won't be. I have no idea how crass you guys get on this podcast, but on Twitter, you can you can see the joke on Twitter. It has something to do with jelly and jam, both as a verb and a noun. I'll put it that way.
It's a good way to leave it.
Yeah. I had no idea what the difference was, and we were on this podcast, and we did something about the jelly and jam. I forget exactly how we got on the topic, but then I just started thinking about the difference, and I was like, I don't know what the difference is between jelly and jam. And David is, he's pontificating and being so eloquent about. I think that episode was about gap control.
It was.
And all of a sudden, he kicks it back over to me, and I go, honestly, I don't even know what you just said because I was looking up the difference between jam and jelly. Exactly what I was doing. That's
one of the great things about your show. And I would say, even for Seahawks fans, if you want to learn more about just intricacies of how offenses and defenses work and just some of those inner workings of play calling and you guys get into that, especially, for in our slow month, we talk to fans of rival NFC West teams. You guys get into kind of that nitty gritty of how offenses and defense, kind of those inner workings.
Yeah, that's the kind of the stuff that we geek out on. That's really the kind of reason behind the podcast. I mean, it's called the Better Rivals. It's a pun off of Bitter Rivals, mostly because, we do love talking about football and our rivals and our rivalries. But we do like to be better football watchers, right? We like to help our fans be better at whatever football argument they're going to be at with their, at the water cooler or at the bar with their buddies or whatever. So we do like to uncover some of the stuff that we think is fun. And so this month we've done a scheme month. We did kind of run defense 101 and gap control. We did defending Chip Kelly's spread offense, how you do that with the secondary, the anatomy of a pass play and quarterback progressions. We read Brian Billick's Building an Offensive Game Plan, which was really, honestly, a lot of Bill Walsh's chapter from Finding the Winning Edge. But hey, man's got to make money. So we did an episode on that. When we hired Chip Kelly, we both just about lost our collective minds. And we're like, oh my God, we get to look at an offense that's functional. Yeah. And so we did a whole series on Chip Kelly's philosophy, his run game, his passing game. And then, of course, because we write for Niners Nation, we put up some corresponding articles on that side as well. So it's just what we like to do. We geek out on it, and we figure if we geek out on it, then other people will geek out on it as well. And it's gone well.
And in your latest show, and Adam, I think you'll appreciate this, is that you guys actually gave the background and explanation into how a quarterback develops David Carr syndrome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so it's funny is I call it David Carr syndrome, but it's really Derek Carr. Wait, no, it's David Carr.
Derek Carr's the good one with the Raiders now.
This is why parents shouldn't do that to their kids, right? Name them different things.
Yeah, give them different letters for their first name.
Yeah, David and then Fred Carr.
I sympathize with the problem because I'm in a family of all B names. I'm Brandon, and then my brothers are Brian and Braden, and I get called Brian all the time.
Oh yeah,
even from people that don't know that I have a brother named Brian, I get called Brian. It's the weirdest thing. I'm sure it happens to Derek too.
When your parents just cycle through the name until they get to the right one.
Yeah.
It's like, Brian, Braden, Bruce, binky, and then up, yeah, and they get to the right one eventually, and you're like, Jesus, I'm your son. Can you figure this out, please? We've known each other for 35 years. Yeah. But yeah, so the whole freaking out and becoming David Carr, it really is. It's quite sad, but. We talked this week about the 4R system, which it's not the only system that's out there for teaching a quarterback to go through his progressions, but it's one that I think resonated with us, and it is a pretty popular system. But you've got the rhythm route, the read route, the rush route, and the release route. And so the rhythm route is going to be the quarterback's first option. This is going to be, if you think of a traditional 5-step drop, what you hear of on TV when they're like, he hit the back of his step and he just throws the ball, transfers power from his back foot over to his front foot, steps into the throw and throws it on time. And oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but this was really the thing that Bill Walsh and Sid Gilman specifically did to timing routes, is that they timed the receiver's route to the drop of the quarterback. And different routes have different timings. This is what Aaron Rodgers does so well, is that not every 5-step drop is the same, but they are all still 5-step drops. And so when Aaron Rodgers hits that 5th step, if he knows that because of his reads and because of the coverages that this wide receiver is going to be open, he throws it on rhythm. It's done. The guy's going to catch it. Game over. Then if that's not open, the quarterback goes to the read route. And this is the quarterback's second option. This is where the quarterback hitches, takes one hitch step, and his feet tell him the timing and where he needs to go. This is what you see Peyton Manning do so well. This is what you see Tom Brady do so well. They look at their rhythm route, not open. They hitch, move up in the pocket, look to their read route. Now they're reading the coverage and they're throwing to open grass. Okay, that guy's not open. Now you get to your third person, and this is the rush route. This is your check down or your hot route. Really, this idea of like a 5 wide receiver concept or a full field scan doesn't happen in the NFL. Most route combinations are 2, 3, maybe 4 routes at most, but that 4 is like an alert. And that's like, look, I'm one-on-one. There's no one covering me. Throw it at me. But mostly it's just going to be 3 routes. And that last one, because you don't have enough time, you've got Von Miller bearing down on you. You know that you just, okay, I've got my flare route. It's my wide receiver, or I've got my middle route, or I've got a Texas route or whatever. And you just kind of throw it, and that's your dump off. If you get through all of those 3 and none of them are open, it's time to GTFO. You got to run. As they said in Ghost, Molly, you in danger, girl, because you're going to get hit. And so you've got to run. And this is, this release is what happens. This is really the core of David Carr syndrome. And I would argue that Colin Kaepernick has a little bit of this too. And I would, for Seahawks fans, I would compare Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson does a really good job of getting through all of these reads before he runs. And when he does run, he's still able to do great things, but he waits until the very last minute before he spins out or before he moves or before he does it. And he's always looking to pass. Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, because his offensive line is Swiss cheese, will go rhythm route. Oh my God, someone in my face. Rhythm route. Oh my God, someone in my face. He never gets the opportunity to go from rhythm to read to rush. So it's not that he can't do those things. It's that he was never afforded the time to. Yeah. And so then in those instances where he does have time, and he can get through his progressions, the moment he sees a flash of color, he's like, oh, gotta go, gotta release. And he's always been so used to being the best athlete on the field that he's always felt like he could get out of it. And now he's not the best athlete on the field. There are defensive end and outside linebackers that can keep up with him. And you end up with a 3, 4, 5, 6 yard loss. And now you're behind the sticks, and now your entire play sheet changes. So that's kind of how you get into it and how we described it. But yeah, it's all about rhythm, read, rush, and release. And if you go from rhythm to release, you end up like David Carr.
Well, see, and this is I like this, Oscar, because this is what you folks get. It's a good intro to what people get listening to the Better Rivals podcast. Now, I can't let you go without talking a little bit of Jed York and Tim Kawakami. And when you heard that story, that Jed York, the owner of the 49ers, made the 49ers beat reporter, Tim Kawakami, settle up on a bet about buying him lunch, except they went to apparently the most expensive lunch spot in probably the entire country. I don't know. I don't know if $4,000 is normal for lunch for Jed York, but it certainly wasn't what Kawakami was expecting. Maybe it wasn't that high. Maybe it was $2,000. It was not cheap.
No, it was about that high. So French Laundry, for those that are uninitiated, for those that don't know the story, basically, long story short, Kawakami and Jed York made a kind of a side bet on Twitter that was a bet that was all in fun. It was a bet about when the stadium was going to get done. It was like, does it get done by this date? Then, I owe you lunch. If not, you owe me lunch. It was a very simple Twitter, like, let's go to Panera Bread and get a sandwich kind of deal.
Right.
And then that turned into when Jed York won, they did open the stadium on time. Then it was like, oh, let's go to French Laundry. And French Laundry is Thomas Keller's restaurant. He's a Michelin-starred chef. French Laundry is considered one of, if not the best restaurant in America. And I had a friend who went there and he took a picture of his bill. And his bill for two people, it's something ridiculous. It's like, 17 courses or something. It was like, but these are like little courses. These are like the things you go to McDonald's afterwards because it was so small. It was, I think, $1,700 for two people.
Wow.
So, it's about $800-ish for food and some wine pairing. So the deal is that this lunch ended up growing to where it was not just York and Kawakami. Then it was like York's wife, some other beat writers went, and they were all going to pay their own dime. So Bill comes and Jed York, he said that he was going to, kind of pay for his wife because his wife was coming.
Right.
Doesn't pay for his wife. And Kawakami's like, all right, like, bro, like he was kind of like giving him some social cues, like you should pay.
Yeah.
Never does it. And so the Kawakami he's a beat writer, he doesn't make, a whole lot of money, or he's a columnist technically. The whole thing happens. And so basically Jed York ends up having Kawakami pay something like $1,600 or $1,700 for lunch.
Yeah. Crazy.
Never apologizes, never does anything about it. So I heard that story. Fully fits within the type of human being I think Jed York is. I don't think that is weird for him. I'm sure he's used to losing 2,000 bets all the time. To him, that's like a drop in the bucket, right?
Right.
So I don't think that he was intentionally being an a-hole. I think he probably just has no serious concept of what $2,000 really means to someone who doesn't make that much money. I think he's kind of a spoiled brat. I think he likes to be the guy who's the champion and likes to be the guy who's on top. And when he's not, he gets kind of temper tantrumy. And that sucks because, as they said in the roast, think about all the things that he's done and they're all bad. But the worst thing that he could probably do is the fact that he's just 36 years old. So he might outlast you as a fan.
Ouch. Well, Oscar, on that note, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us every year and talking a little bit of Seahawks and Niners. And for people who want to find the Better Rivals podcast, find you on Twitter, where do they go?
They can follow me at Twitter at Better Rivals. That's BETTR Rivals. You can always find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, your podcast app of choice. And so if you go to SoundCloud and just search for Better Rivals, you'll see all of our ski month stuff. You'll see all the stuff that we did on Chip Kelly. So give it a listen if you're so inclined. And gents, thanks. It's always a pleasure hanging out with y'all.
The Seahawkers podcast is the official podcast of the official booster club of the Seattle Seahawks. Adam and I getting into the second half of the show, going to get into some some better life. Mm-hmm. Got comments from an angry listener, Adam.
She's not angry. She
I don't
just
know.
disagrees. She just disagrees.
I don't know. It sounds pretty angry. Our good buddy, Rochelle Mantanona.
Are we getting into that right now? Do you want to get into it right now?
We can get into it right now, or we can talk about the fact that you and I, Adam, are going to be road tripping out to Seattle, going to training camp.
This is exciting, man.
I'm really excited about this.
August 10th, man. We're going to be at training camp. We apparently are going to be allowed to interview some players. So that's going to be super cool. I couldn't be more jacked about it. It's going to be so much fun.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. Just to be there and just to see training camp. You've never experienced this, Adam, and so I'm really excited for you to have the experience of being there, just to see what it's like with fellow Seahawks fans up on the hill watching practice. It's a good time just to see what the atmosphere is like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a ton of fun all the way around. And then plus, I'll get to see some of these guys actually out there performing with my own eyeballs for a change.
You won't just have to watch your little your iPad screen of training camp.
Are they going to do it again this year? But they always see the thing. My problem with that is that they'd always just show them warming up.
Yeah,
and then it'd be pretty much done. It's like, how many times am I going to watch the bag drill? You know what I mean? Like,
it's only interesting for so long.
Yeah, I mean, probably a reason I've been single for as long as I have, right? You know,
because you're tuning into that every day.
Yeah, that might be.
Just shows that you're ready for football to be back.
I'm so ready for football to be back. I can't even wait.
You know who else is ready for football to be back is Rochelle, because
yes,
I think with this Pokemon thing, you went off on, and I did to a certain extent, but mine.
This is my problem to start with here. This was a joint do better, and yet all of her ire was directed just right to me.
Well, to me, I was more making a comment on the augmented reality thing just not being a big deal because I could do it anytime I want on the show.
Right.
And to you were a little bit more emphatic toward your dislike for the whole Pokemon thing. So I'm going to read Rochelle's note to you.
Yes.
To share it on the show. And it says, I know you did not hate on Pokemon, Adam. Pokemon has been out for 20 years. Your hate is very unfounded and just full of ignorance. If you don't like it, that's fine. But don't hate on people that love things because they love it. It's like people who hate on sports for no founded reasons. This game makes $1.6 million a day and Nintendo stock went up to $7.5 billion. You have people of all ages, races, creeds, genders enjoying the hell out of this game, hanging out and meeting up, just talking to each other over the love of this game. People's mental health has improved because they're going out and about versus staying inside. And esports is a thing. You may not understand it, but it's a thing. It's here to stay. It makes crazy amount of money. Understand that just because you don't understand it doesn't make it not valid and something else people love. Yes, there are reports of stupid people getting hurt for playing this game because they weren't paying attention. Stupid people are everywhere, just like in football. See Jason Pierre-Paul and so many other players, which we could get into or do better. Your vitriol on this game really pisses me off. It's close-mindedness like yours that perpetuates bullying on gamers and seeing gamer culture as something negative when it's just another medium that people love, enjoy, be passionate about, and share their love among like-minded folk. Isn't that the same thing as football fans? Like the 12s? If anything, see the comment. It relates to both sides. Let people enjoy things. And Rochelle included a comment, a little comic strip of, some people say, oh, hey, watching some sports ball, when they don't agree with watching sports as being a thing. Yeah. And it just says, shh, let people enjoy things.
First off and foremost, I love it when the listeners come back at me and have a beef with anything that I say. I really do. I like that you guys feel like you can do that, and I hope you continue to do it. So first, I want to start out with Ro here. First thing is, in The Princess Bride, where like Wesley, instead of saying "I love you," like he had another phrase, right? It was "as you wish."
Right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Ro and I need to come up with something like that because I do. I love her. I love her. But the problem is she's dead ass wrong, and we're gonna forever, ever vehemently disagree on this topic, and we may have to agree to vehemently disagree because she says, it's good, it's getting people outside, it's improving mental health. Just go the catfish outside. You don't need your phone to go outside. You don't. In fact, you'll actually look around, maybe enjoy the outside for what it is. And as a Montanan, I don't live here to get rich, right? I live here because I like being on the river. I like hiking up behind my house.
Yeah, it's close.
I like being, I can do just about anything outside anytime that I want. And I certainly don't. In fact, I often, and Brandon can attest to this, leave my phone at home for that very thing. I think it's unhealthy to take the gaming thing even further from out of your living room now into every interaction of your human life. You're going further away from what it means to be a human being. Now, as far as the esports thing, I said it wasn't a sport. I didn't say it wasn't a thing. It's definitely a thing. People do it. I get that. And I'm not mad that people do it. You can go do that. If you want to watch other people play video games, knock yourself out. I got catfish to do. So whatever it is you want to do, that's fine. I'm not hating that way. But esports are not sports. That's what I was saying. Because you're not actually doing
Look, Adam doesn't even believe golf is a sport. And that's like a thing that people actually believe is a sport.
Right. Exactly. So I'm sorry. It doesn't make the cut. And as far as people bullying people in gaming culture, I've never understood the idea of being bullied. If you're feeling bullied, tell them to shut the catfish up and move along about your life. Just don't let them bother you. Like, look, I don't get it. I don't get the gaming mentality. I don't get sitting inside all day staring at a screen, having your thumbs cramp up. Like, I don't. I mean, sure, it's fun like in February, like middle of February when, the snow's been blowing sideways for 3 weeks and you got nothing better to do. Like, I get it. And you take a couple days and you play a game. I got it. I can never, ever, ever get on board with it as a lifestyle. I think it's something that is a problem in the country. And I don't know what phrase we're coming up with, Ro, but as you wish.
Everybody has their thing to blow off a little steam. Everybody needs that outlet. And everybody needs it in a healthy amount.
Right. And I feel like this takes it to an unhealthy amount. That's my point. That's my biggest problem with it. So we'll have to agree to completely and utterly disagree.
Well, the good thing here is, Adam, is we've spent a good 115, 116 episodes establishing the fact that you're a curmudgeon. And
apparently, yes.
So, I mean, if that doesn't give, anyone who's offended, let alone, not just Ro, but anyone who's offended by your comments, they should realize this. You're a curmudgeon.
Right. And you know what? If you come on my lawn while playing Pokemon Go, you're going to really get off my lawn. Like, it's going to be a big time one.
Let's get into some do better and better at life, Adam.
All right, man. So why don't you hit up your do better here first?
Well, my do better this week, speaking of just stupid people being everywhere,
yes,
including the NFL, a stupid person appears to have, someone who's done stupid things over and over and over. The former 49er, Alden Smith, and now Oakland Raiders linebacker, apparently posted a live video to Periscope. Yeah, and Periscope is a platform where you can go live with any kind of video.
Okay.
And this is what he decides to show. No face, just his hand with a rolled up something.
It's a joint.
And you hear a woman in the background saying, essentially telling him how stupid he is for going live with this.
Awesome.
Essentially trying to help him out. He's not hearing any of it. And when his final line is, "You're stupid, you tripping, they don't know it's me. It's not like I put Alden Smith."
Oh, wow. Wow, dude. He's just not bright.
The whole time saying you can't see his face. Nobody knows it's him. And then he drops his name right at the end. And on his Twitter, he says, haha, funny. It's not me. That not very strong of a denial. I don't know if there's many people going online to try and fake being Alden Smith to try and get you in more trouble, buddy.
Yeah. And if you do, what kind of enemies do you have out there? That they would go to that kind of oddly elaborate prank. It's him. It's just him. He's just not bright. Dude, I don't care if you're toking it up. Do it, dude. I could really care less.
Not everything needs to go on the internet.
That's the exact point, dude.
When you see the history of stupidity from Alden Smith, arrested on DUI in 2012, January, arrested again in September 2013, driving under the influence, possession of marijuana, and then charged with 3 felony counts of illegal possession of assault weapon, sentenced to community service in 2014. He has a history. And so it would not surprise any of us if this was, in fact, Alden Smith on the video, cleverly trying to say it's not him when not cleverly dropping his name as part of the video. Alden Smith, do better.
I agree, man. That guy's a knucklehead. He needs to, he needs a lot of things, and do better is definitely one of them. All right, man. My do better this week is for stupidity, all the same, but just a little different than yours. Mine is for Warren Sharp of Roto World, and basically he decided to go and try to calculate the strength of schedule for all the teams in the NFL for this upcoming year. And he did it using Vegas win totals. So he did it using wins predicted by gamblers, basically. Not even like expert predicting, possible wins going forward. Just dudes in Vegas, basically, is what it boils down to.
Uh-huh.
They calculated that the Seahawks have the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL, which, however, I don't even care what they said their strength was at the end of it. Just stop it. Don't even try to predict the strength of schedule. You can't do it. You know, when you talk about strength of schedule, after about week 13, 14, when you actually have seen what some of the other teams are and how tough they actually were that year, you know what you can't predict? Whether or not Joe Flacco blows out his ACL before you end up playing the Ravens. They can't predict any of that crap. Trying to predict strength of schedule in the preseason is one of the dumbest futile exercises that a person could go through, and for wasting all of our time yet again in his own time. He probably has kids. He could have taken them outside and actually done stuff with them, been a father. But instead, he's using Vegas win totals to try to predict a strength of schedule that cannot possibly be figured out yet. Warren Sharp of Roto World, do better.
Well, it's not just Warren Sharp either. I saw USA Today had put together their schedules for every single one of all the NFL teams and went through the entire schedule, predicted game by game where each team was going to fall out in win totals, and posted that. And
it's so stupid.
Why are you wasting your time?
It's so stupid.
Even if you get a few clicks on your article from it, don't you waste more time than it's worth?
Well, not only that, but okay, you get a few clicks, but how many of those people click on it and go, oh, this is stupid, and then just never come back to any more of your articles? You didn't help yourself in the end. Put out quality content.
Right.
And I know maybe I should follow our own rule there, but the idea here is just, look, we've talked about strength of schedule on the show, right? Like when we were discussing if the Panthers were actually like a really good team being undefeated as long as they were or not.
Yeah.
But you could do that towards the end of the year because you could see that most of the teams that they played were dumpster fires. That's when it's a legitimate talking point, strength of schedule. But going into the season, how many people predicted last year the Panthers were going to go more or less undefeated for the entire year? Whether they go 15-1.
Right.
Nobody saw that coming. I mean, every year there's a team that is surprising that jumps up and a team that is surprising that jumps down, if not a handful. It's just stupid, and it just annoys me.
Trying to predict what's going to happen in the season is as futile as giving teams letter grades for their draft class right after the draft happens.
It's a great comparison because it's the exact same BS. It's exactly right.
Got to stop reading it. Got to stop reading those things.
I didn't read the whole thing. I just saw the headline, clicked on it, I was like, oh, what an idiot. And then I knew I didn't have to read the rest of the thing. So
that's essentially what I did with the USA Today article too. I saw that they picked 267 games. That's what they went through, 267 games. That sounds like an incredible waste of time. And it's not like you have the Back to the Future Sports Almanac to give you assistance for picking these games.
Yeah, nope. Just stop it. I need these people to stop it. All right, man. What do you say we get on to some better at life than Skip Bayless?
Yeah, my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is Hall of Famer Ken Griffey Jr. going into Cooperstown, giving a speech, and it brought back so many good memories. And, there's maybe an honorary do better. Danny Kelly, formerly of Field Goals, now of The Ringer, wrote a great article this last week talking about the movie Major League. And just how there's a lot of lessons that we can still take from that movie, Major League, especially the fact that movie does not end with the Indians winning the World Series. No, it just ends with the Indians winning the pennant, right? It's finishing the regular season and beating out, just finishing at the top of their division. And that's the end of the movie. And you think back to that 1995 Mariners season, and that play where Edgar Martinez hits the double, Ken Griffey Jr. comes sliding into home plate, everybody piled on top of him,
Yep.
And you have that memory. That was not a World Series memory, but in the minds of so many Mariners fans,
it's one of the greatest ones.
That memory is just ingrained in our brains, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that was one of the great moments in Mariners history. I still
Seattle
can't
sports
believe,
history.
Yeah, I still can't believe a couple of those Mariners teams didn't at least even make it to the World Series.
I know.
Like, it blows my mind. But I think you're dead on with Griffey, man, with being better, because it's never iffy if it's Griffey. That's one of the best phrases of all time. Like, I'll never forget that. That is ingrained in my mind, just like him running up the wall, just like all the fun he had when he was out there, that smile, that sweet, sweet swing. Man, he was one of the most gifted guys to ever do it, and he wasn't on the juice.
Yeah, never a question with Griffey of whether or not he had anything to do in an era where everybody seemingly was doing it. And there was that big question of whether or not his Hall of Fame bust would have his hat forward or backward. But unfortunately, it was forward. But, it's kind of consistent with everything else. But what I did like what he did is after he finished off his Hall of Fame induction speech, turned his cap around and finished his speech that way. And for that, Ken Griffey Jr., better at life than Skip Bayless.
I agree. Very well done, Brandon. I'm still undecided on my better at life, Brandon. I've got two.
Okay. Do you need my help to narrow it down?
Yeah. Do you want a controversial one, or do you want another light, fluffy, former Seattle great sports figure one?
Well, you know me. I'm all about avoiding controversy, so let's go with the fluffy one.
Okay. All right. So my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is for none other than Matthew Hasselbeck. We all love and know Matthew Hasselbeck, of course. Do. Yeah, when I said light and fluffy former Seattle sports great, this is what I'm talking about.
Oh, good.
Yeah. He started out his career now, his second career, as one of the guys on ESPN's football shows and going to be one of their analysts. And second day, out of the box, firing, like getting some insights that you're going to get nowhere else. I mean, this is the type of stuff you're going to get from Hasselbeck. First, the second day here, they're asking him about him and Andrew Luck's relationship. And he says, quote, he's kind of like a college kid still. He takes pride in not showering. Kind of a thing. He's grungy. And that kind of confirms things that I had kind of felt about Andrew Luck. Like, not in a bad way. I just think that's hilarious.
Does not surprise me at all.
Just little insights. And he's like, yeah, it was weird. He'd come over to the house, with me and the wife, and he's far closer in age to my kids than I am to him. And so basically how it worked out was Andrew Luck hanging out with the kids and like him and his wife just having to, have conversation on their own. And that he also used Andrew Luck because he's a Stanford guy and a very smart guy as more of a babysitter / tutor. He would really, especially in the math department, he had Andrew Luck helping out his kids with their math homework because, he's a smart guy. So these are kind of little things. I think Matt's going to be awesome at this job. I'm really looking forward to seeing him and Dilfer together out on the set. And, just another Seattle sports icon that is now going to be in the mainstream focus day in, day out. I love Matt Hasselbeck, and he is better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, this is really cool how many former Seattle Seahawks are in the NFL media now with Trent Dilfer, Matt Hasselbeck, Mike Robb, and Nate Burleson.
Yep.
Jordan Babineau. I mean, got guys everywhere.
There are guys everywhere. I think it's working out great. So that I think he earned it this week. I really do.
Well, Adam, what do you say we get out of here with that?
There's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks!
Thanks for tuning in to our show. The Seahawkers podcast is hosted on Libsyn.com. If you're thinking about starting your own podcast, visit Libsyn.com, Libsyn.com, and use promo code SHP to get free podcast hosting for the rest of this month and all of next month. That's promo code SHP. Visit Libsyn.com, use your promo code. Go Hawks.